On today's episode, we are talking with Thomas, who is an incoming trainee clinical psychologist. We are talking about so many interesting things, namely being a slightly older applicant and also starting studying later in life as well, following revelations in a personal life that made existential ponderings happen. It's a fascinating listen. I hope you'll find it so useful, and also stay tuned right to the end for Thomas's top tips on how to reduce burnout along the way to becoming whatever psychologist you aim to be.
If you're looking to become a psychologist, then let this be your guide. With this podcast at your side, you'll be on your way to being qualified. It's the Aspiring Psychologist Podcast with Dr. Marianne Trent.
It's been my absolute pleasure to be bringing this podcast to you since December 2021, and I have no plans to stop. So if you have any ideas for content you'd love to hear about, please do let me know. Guest for today's episode did get in contact with me via LinkedIn, and I have to say, the first time I didn't see the message, but he responded again in a message to something he'd heard me say in the podcast as a call out for if people had ideas. And that was about the age of you compared to your supervisor and how the dynamics play out. And that is absolutely something that's cropping up in today's episode. And it's really fascinating stuff. It's a really useful listen or watch if you're watching on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, please do take a moment to like, to subscribe, to put a comment in, and to share the content if you think, which I think, it's useful and other people might benefit too. Please do also come along and discuss this episode in my free Facebook group, which is the Aspiring Psychologist Community with Dr. Marianne Trent. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple, please do take a moment to rate and review. It really does mean so much. So with no further ado, let's plough on with this episode, and I will catch you on the other side. So I just want to welcome along Thomas, an incoming trainee clinical psychologist to the podcast. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Marianne. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for reaching out. And I'm sorry that I did miss your first LinkedIn message, but persistence definitely pays off.
I am nothing if not persistent, that's for sure.
I love that. So we're going to hear about a variety of different reasons why I think that you make a great podcast guest and why our audience are going to really love what you've got to say. For anybody watching on YouTube, you might well have noticed that Thomas is my age. And we've also coordinated our outfits beautifully, haven't we? We've gone for the same shade of burnt orange. So, yeah, you are 42. Is that right, Thomas?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Fellow 81 baby, maybe. But yeah. How's 42 working out for you so far?
So far, it's been pretty great. I think my 40s have so far been my best decade. And I think the way it's shaping up, it's going to continue to go that way. So yeah, I think 40 is pretty great. I'm quite glad to be here in my 40s.
I know. I feel similarly, and yet it was something I was dreading. I know it's something I spoke about on the podcast recently, but I really thought it was going to all be downhill and quite depressing, and I'd feel awful and old and like my life was over.
Yeah, I think in my 20s, I don't even think I even thought about getting to 40 or what that would look like. But I think it was probably like quite grey, like visually in my mind. I think it was all in black and white, and it was all quite boring and somber. But it isn't. It's burnt orange instead.
I was
quite
just
fun
thinking
and interesting.
40 is burnt orange colour, you know. So was it lavender and lilac is 70s and 80s, but clearly 40s is burnt orange. But I think it didn't help me that when I was 39, just before the world ground to a halt with the pandemic, my eyes packed up and I suddenly needed glasses, and I was like, oh God, this is so depressing. This is just what my 40s is going to be. There's going to be one ailment after another.
Yeah, since leaving university, which maybe we'll come on to, because I only recently left university. Yeah, I got into my job and I started to get headaches and migraines. So hence I also now wear glasses. And the person who did my eye test, she did say, well, it's just a sign of aging. And I was like, oh, terrific. Here it comes. It's already here.
Absolutely.
Here it comes. It's here.
Absolutely. I've also got a very similar pair of glasses to you as well, Thomas. We could be like twins. Burnt
So is
orange,
my manager.
black frame glasses, twins.
Yeah. So it's burnt orange and kind of roundish glasses as well.
It's where it's at. It's where all the cool kids hang out, I think. Yeah. So, yeah, you mentioned there that you went to university a little later than probably the average listener would have done. Could you guide us through your steps a little bit, if that's okay?
Yeah. So definitely older than the kind of typical. So I never went to university at the kind of typical age. Partly because I never finished my A-levels, so whoops. I tried twice and didn't get to the end either time. So I wasn't qualified to go to university, but I also wasn't, I don't know, just personally, emotionally, developmentally qualified to take that either. So instead, I just spent a decade and a half moving from job to job, completely disparate squiggle of a path. I was, yeah, that was maybe 15 years. I guess I had a significant life event in my mid-30s, the kind of life event that makes you very quickly and clearly reassess what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it, and it kind of distills all of the nonsense that you tell yourself. So that's what happened to me, and I very quickly decided that enough was enough of not doing anything without a great deal of purpose or direction, and to actually do the thing that secretly was the thing that I always wanted to do, and the thing that I would always like to develop as, which is to be some kind of psychologist. So I went part-time in my job. Not having any A-levels was a bit of a barrier, still a barrier to university. So I did an access to higher education course, which is a kind of part-time, part-ish time, 1 year course, which is equivalent to 2 A-levels. And I did that in psychology, sociology, and social policy. And then from that, I got into my undergrad, and that was in 2018. So I graduated 2021. So yeah, not the typical timeline, definitely not.
But actually, you've encompassed a whole pandemic there as well. So you were studying your undergrad during that time.
Yeah, it was epiphany term second year, wasn't it? So that's basically half of the degree and half of the experience of being at university was then kind of taken away from us. I think part of me actually still mourns the death of that third year in terms of the experience of it. I know everyone will have their own version of this, but I think for me and maybe other people in my cohort, that was our experience of having that taken away. Which, yeah, I still wish there are things left undone, things left unsaid, that always will be, which is a shame. But like I said, everyone has their own version of that in some way. So
absolutely. Yeah. I wrote some stuff for the media about grief linked to the pandemic that was not to do with death and dying. And there's so many things that so many of us missed out on. And like you said, that can't be undone. You can't get a do-over, a redo on them. And it's okay to be sad and to grieve for something even though you might not have lost somebody, through death in the pandemic, it's okay to grieve for important life events that didn't get to happen as they would have done otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think there's a lot to be said for the death of a fantasy, a projected death, and that plays out in my role as well, my current role, that I see what people imagine their future and their life is going to be doesn't happen, and there is a struggle in moving from the fantasy to reality, and reconciling that those two things are never going to be the same. So there was a small version of that for me, not comparable, but a version, my own version.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I want to ask you 1,000 other questions about other things you've mentioned. But what I want to do before we move on is to just say, gosh, well done. Like, you make it sound quite easy that you dropped down to part-time and did a whole degree during the whole pandemic whilst working, and, running your own life in the background as well. But, there's clearly something that really resonated with you that made you accountable to yourself and gave you permission to take yourself seriously and to do what it was you wanted. And I think that's incredible. And, just hats off to you for treating yourself with respect and thinking about what you want the next 40 years to look like, rather than just thinking, it's the sunk cost fallacy, isn't it? I don't know if you've heard that term before, but you think, well, I've already had 35 years of this and it's been all right. I'll just carry on as I am. But you were like, no, actually, by the time I get to the next 35, 40 years, I'd like to think that there's been a different chunk of my life.
Yeah, I love that reflection, and that's absolutely the process that happened in as I said, with this kind of significant life event. It happened in a very, very short space of time, just within just a few weeks. And in terms of the sunk cost fallacy, absolutely, because one of the things that I left behind was playing music and songwriting, which I'd been kind of living a parallel life alongside my kind of day jobs that I didn't really care about or wasn't really developing in, almost kind of intentionally, because I was trying to become a professional songwriter. And I spent a long time doing that and developing it, and it was part of my identity. I was really committed, or I thought I was. I thought I enjoyed it. I thought it was good for me. And just within a few weeks, all of that, I dropped it all. I dropped the whole thing from who I was and what I was doing. And yeah, so in the sunk cost fallacy, it was this really clear period of time where everything became kind of HD, and it was like none of this is really worth anything to me, or to maybe even to anybody else, not in the wider sense of things. And it's, yeah, what you said about accountability is absolutely one of the first thoughts, one of the foundational thoughts that I had was, just really simply, at some point I'm going to die, and it's going to be sooner than I think, and I had better have more to show for it than what I have right now. And what I have right now isn't enough. And if today was the last day, I would be really disappointed with myself. So yeah, really insightful reflection in terms of the accountability, and that's what it is really. And part of that process was actually leaving myself to be accountable only to myself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's powerful stuff. Thank you for sharing that with us. And as you speak, I'm remembering my dad, who died when he was 71, much sooner than we would have liked. But, his deathbed regrets, I think they're always quite interesting to think about what people think about on their deathbed. And his was, I wish I'd worked harder in school, but yours will now not be that, because you've had that sort of epiphany moment that you have been able to think about doing things differently, and, that's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's been powerful enough to make me change everything that I was doing, basically, to become completely unrecognizable in the space of 5 years from what it was. So yeah, and it continues to be the driver and continues to help, I suppose. Also, like you said about looking ahead for the next 40 years, yeah, that is something that I think about and think to construct. And maybe I'm building a fantasy that I have to adjust and reconcile with not achieving, but I have those things laid out now, whereas before I didn't. Not really. It's quite vague.
I'm kind of thinking about trauma and recovery. So trauma is my specialty, and I'm thinking about it being about 7 years actually since you started this kind of moment of growth and change. And it's said that in 7 years all of our cells will renew, and so even the cells on your arm are actually different than they were 7 years ago, and that can be a helpful thing for people to grapple with when they've been, for example, assaulted or hurt. It's like, actually, the body now that you have is now different than the body that was hurt by that person, and that can be really helpful. But in thinking about recovery, mental health recovery, I think you've done something really incredible, and something that's going to be a real gift to people that might hear this podcast episode even in years to come, that they might be in a position now that feels like they're feeling quite stuck, quite trapped. So I think what you've done there really beautifully is you've given hope to so many people who might be struggling at the moment, who might be struggling to imagine that their life could ever be different, that they could be working in a career that they enjoy, that they could be looking forward to the next decades of their life, not just scraping by, that they can potentially enter a realm of pay and rewards that are going to be, offering them and their family financial security, not just now, but in terms of pension as well. And I think, wow, what a gift for people to think how much they could turn their lives around. And, you've done it. I think that's just incredible. Again, hats off to you.
Thanks. I haven't really thought about it in that way. So I'll leave that for you to say. Things like that don't really sit very comfortably with me. The idea that I might inspire somebody. But yeah, that's maybe the middle child in me.
It could well be. And I know something else you mentioned that I'd not heard of was a colourful leadership test. We're obviously both burnt orange, but could you tell us a little bit about that for people that might be listening?
So in the service I work in, we have 2 trainees, we always have 2 second-year trainees. So occasionally I get to kind of dip into some of their teaching, and we were talking about it was part of their leadership training. They were looking at 4 different personality types, and these personality types were kind of color coded. I must preface this by saying I don't know if this is like an evidence-based thing or not, but it was pretty cool regardless. And the exercise was that there was a whole bunch of words put on the screen, and you have to really quickly, without trying to think about it too much, write down the words that you think really relate to you, really vibe with you. So you do that really quickly, and then on the next screen, all those words are then color coded. So then you count up how many greens you have, how many reds you have, how many blues, and how many yellows. And the idea is that whichever color you have the most of, that's your dominant kind of personality type. So mine was green, which apparently most of their cohort was. So I guess I'm doing something right in choosing this pathway. So green was all about kind of, so what one of the things that it then splits is, so a green person, a green personality, this is so squidgy, isn't it? So fluffy, but the green personality, on a good day, this is what they look like. So they look like they're compassionate, they're kind, they're patient. It's like, okay, that sounds like someone who could do well as a psychologist. And then it says on a bad day, this is what they would look like. And one of the I mean, this was basically my take-home message, that on a bad day I'm bland. It actually said bland. So I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go on a podcast, and I really need to make sure that that people catch me on a good day. Otherwise, this is going to be an awful podcast.
Oh,
So
I
I
was
don't know.
muted, so you couldn't hear me laughing. But I love that. I love that. And my kids tell me that of all of their YouTubers that they're a fan of, I am their least favorite,
That's
which
brutal,
is
isn't
just
it?
delightful. Yeah, they say I should be doing videos on Minecraft because they'd be much more popular.
Obviously, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's what
But
the world needs
you
more
know,
of.
I think there's a lot of value in the bland as well. I really do.
Really? Okay.
Not that
Um,
I'm condoning that you're bland, but what am I like on a bad day? So I guess I would question the bad day aspect of it. So I'm a whole person, you are a whole person, and there will be aspects of me, some of which will be more sociable, some of which will be chattier, some of which need to be left alone and like to be, like to spend time by myself. And it's me as a holistic person. So if you catch me on a day where I don't want to chat, then if I see you in the supermarket, then I probably will hide, because I'm just not in that mood. And sometimes if I've done something really, really social for days and days on end, I just want to spend a day in bed reading my book. But that's not necessarily a bad day. That's about nourishing and respecting myself. But yeah, I guess some of the stuff I talk about is bland, is boring, unless that topic really resonates with you. And over 42,000 people have resonated with the topics I've discussed so far. So it can't be super bland. And I think life is not always a roller coaster adventure, is it? You and I have had 42 years of it. Every day at bedtime, my children and I do. So I've got a 9-year-old who will like me to tell you he's almost 10, and a 7-year-old. And every day at bedtime, I'm by no means a perfect parent. If people are thinking, oh gosh, she's amazing, because I'm not. Every day at bedtime with both of them, we do a what's the favorite part of your day and what's the least favorite part of the day. But they also ask me the same question. And, I get loads of lovely things from them about their favorite and their least favorite. And sometimes my most favorite day reply is just like, it was just all right. There wasn't anything particularly good. There wasn't anything particularly bad. It was just a day. And isn't that just adulting, really? Sometimes it's a bit vanilla. Sometimes it is a bit bland.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I was also thinking about. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of plateauing that goes on in life, isn't there? Between the bumps and the troughs. But I actually like when you said, oh, maybe it's a good thing. I did actually think, well, maybe in terms of like the idea of the blank canvas therapist, being able to, kind of absorb transference. There's maybe something in that. Maybe another way of looking at it would be that. So maybe I should be channeling my inner bland during sessions, and then I can pick up all this transference. So yeah, maybe it's my secret power, my blandness, but maybe just not as a podcast guest. I don't know.
I really don't think you are bland, but I think what's really brilliant about training, and what you might well experience for yourself too, is that you're likely to do a variety of different approaches during training. So in my first year, I was really into psychodynamic, and that I'd started to pave the way for a psychodynamic placement for placement 6. But my latter interests were much more probably humanistic, and I've ended up doing CFT. So if I'd been introduced to CFT. For anyone listening that's not sure what that is, that's compassion focused therapy. Earlier in the process, I might well have done something different. But what I really like about training is you get a chance to try on different hats. So I did solution focused, I did systemic, I did psychodynamic, and you get to see, oh, well, what happens when I run therapy sessions in this way? And then you get to think about which bits you like, which bits you want to keep, and which bits you want to leave there and never use again. And so, I would empower you to try and really get, I mean, some of it's not within your control, but to try and get as wide a variety of exposure to different therapeutic orientations on placements as you can. And that might even be when you're on placement, seeking out maybe someone that's not your supervisor to shadow some sessions with, and to maybe have some ad hoc supervision sessions with, to get a different understanding of what is likely to be a very similar population within your service. Because I've learned so much from people in that way.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Especially considering trainees are trainees. They are being developed from one side to the other, and when they qualify, they're at the beginning of their career as a clinical psychologist. It's not the doctorate isn't the end goal. It's the preface of the beginning, in, if you want to put it like that. So the idea of being trained in as broad a way as possible is something that really appeals to me. It really appeals to me about the course that I'm joining. It's one of the reasons why I applied for it, is that they offer training in 4 different models. I'm not quite sure how I feel about CBT +1 on a lot of the courses, given that trainees are not even qualified yet, and why you would narrow it down at such an early stage in people's careers. Notwithstanding the fact that you can then qualify and you have a whole career in which to explore different things. But personally, I think the course is maybe the perfect time to explore those things. And I've been really lucky in the service that I work in, that I've been able to experience and use adapted versions of different models, which has been has been terrifically privileged and fortunate that I've had that kind of AP role. So for example, for one client, we used CBT for the formulation stage, but then used CFT for the kind of intervention stage. So we kind of not strictly, but and adapted versions of both things, but we kind of just brought in elements from CFT, and I really like that in sort of integration of different ideas and different models. Maybe that's how I'd like to develop, but we'll see. Again, in that 7-year cycle, I'll probably be completely different to how I am now. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring that broad range, and especially given that, when we think about the therapeutic alliance being the biggest predictor of a positive outcome, it doesn't exactly render the model or the choice. It doesn't render the choice irrelevant, but it does mean that, exploring different models means that you can catch one that really sort of resonates with you, and you feel just is a kind of path of least resistance. I can use this. I know it. It feels right. It feels good. I'm good at it. And that gives you maybe more of an opportunity to develop that therapeutic alliance, more opportunity to have positive outcomes. Maybe, I don't know.
Absolutely. And I've become, and this isn't it. Yeah, I think let's go back to your earlier point. You're worthy of praise, and you're allowed to say good things about yourself, and you're allowed others to say good things about you. So I'm going to say something good about myself now to model that. I'm a much better clinical psychologist now than I was when I qualified, as we are expected to be. Really, it's kind of thinking about the first couple of years as being preceptorship, and then really you're fully qualified a couple of years later. It's certainly it felt like the case for me. I've become better and better as years have gone on, but I would say that I'm now truly an integrative psychologist. And what I really love about this stage of my career is that, every client has a different intervention because it's bespoke for them. And if something stops working, or if something resonates with them in a session, I will literally go, right, okay. And there might even be a, as I think about that, I touch my mouth. I do that. And I'll look off to the right, and then I'll dig into my therapeutic toolbox. It's like rummaging in an old doctor's bag, and I will find something that is going to be transformative for them. That's just the best job in the world. I love it. Being able to pull across. So sometimes it will be an idea from psychodynamic. Sometimes it will be an idea from systemic. Sometimes it will be something completely random that I've made up for them that will resonate because it's got, like an analogy. So I've used recently, I've used the idea of, I don't know if you're a gardener, Thomas, I don't know if that's yet hit your world, but climbing plants will send out little shoots. And I've used that to help somebody understand OCD and to help externalize that, to kind of think about it desperately looking for support and reassurance. And, so it's not going to blow over in the wind, but actually it's a bit of a lie, OCD. It's a whole another episode, but that has been really helpful. And so I'm just excited for where you're going and for this growth explosion you're going to have. And your brain is going to basically rewire itself, which is also really exciting. We think about that happening in key areas of, adolescence, childhood, growing, adolescence. But when we also start a new job, we'll suddenly often notice, I can't sleep very well. I'm fizzed up with ideas. My brain is trying to process everything. But it really is an exciting period of change and growth. I'm really excited for you to experience that, and I hope that you find it to be a really positive experience.
Yeah, same. And I had a lot of thoughts when you're talking through all of that. I suppose I'm quite committed to the idea of the continuous development, the idea that I'll be a complete, finished clinician at any stage isn't really in my thoughts. So yeah, in terms of like keeping my brain ticking over from here on in is really comforting. I really like it. I've plateaued a lot in my working life. So the idea that there may be no more plateaus is quite nice. And I'm definitely up for that. That's also part of the appeal of going into clinical psychology, and I suppose going into a science where we're kind of all at the same time. We're at the absolute limit of our understanding, but we're also already behind where we're going to be. And that really appeals to me. I'm quite comfortable. I feel quite comfortable being in that position. And I suppose in my own development, I'm quite comfortable knowing where I am, but knowing also where I might be. Because when you're talking about developing after qualification, having the experience to integrate different models, I'm really looking forward to being able to do that. And I've seen it, of course, in more experienced colleagues. And, I do occasionally fanboy a little bit over them. But I also know that if I just keep going, just keep working hard, I get a bit of luck, then I'll get there as well eventually. But I'm quite comfortable and happy about like where I am now versus where I was, and then quite excited about where I am now versus where I might be.
Good.
And yes,
but
yes,
actually,
I also do like gardening as well. I have an
good.
allotment.
Good to know.
So
Oh, how
another
lovely! How lovely.
another 40's vibe, I think, is burnt orange on an allotment.
What's your most successful produce this year?
Oh gosh. Well, this year's been weird because July hasn't happened, basically. All the rain has been in the wrong place. The sun has been in the wrong place. The cold weather was in the wrong place. So goodness knows what it's like to be a plant at the
The
moment.
radishes haven't fared well, I believe, this year.
Um,
Not been enough water at key
yeah.
times.
At the moment, I think so. My partner grows flowers, so we have lots of flowers. They're all looking good. So I think maybe beetroot looks okay
Oh,
at the moment.
nice.
Yeah,
Good.
courgettes
Good
look happy.
veg update. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all right.
I do think there is value in the plateau, though, and we can't keep relentlessly striving all the time, because it's exhausting. And sometimes we do need to go to supervision and go, can't be bothered. I can't seem to make any shifts. I can't seem to make any changes. I'm managing my work, but it is what it is. I don't know. And I think you've got to be able to have that. But even in supervision sessions, sometimes I will learn so much, because we should ideally always have a supervisor who's more experienced than ourselves to be able to help contain us, to be able to help shape us and to help us grow and to help us think about being able to overcome things from a different perspective than the one that we're currently feeling a bit trapped in, so that our clients can benefit from the safety, the security, the growth of the supervision relationship as well. And I guess I'd welcome your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so most of what I say, about 5 minutes after I say it, I reflect and think, oh, it's probably not, that's not quite right, is it? That's not quite true. So that's, yeah, I'm a chronic ruminator, a chronic reflector. So when I said that about no more plateaus, I did think, well, yeah, there will be, and there's value in the plateau with consolidation of what you know. Yeah, you can't consolidate if you're constantly learning. So that I guess there has to be that kind of period where it all kind of settles and you become confident in what you've learned and what you know. So yeah, sure.
Yeah, if we're constantly feeling like there's stuff to learn, then we're going to constantly begin to believe that we don't know anything and we're not enough. So sometimes there has to be that feeling of mastery. Oh, yeah, I get this. And this is what I say, I've said before on the podcast, is that in a cohort, sometimes you will be so blown away by the experiences that people in your cohort are talking about and the level of comfortability that they're able to demonstrate for a particular topic. And you'll be like, oh God, I don't know anything about that. And that makes you feel quite squirmy in your tummy. It makes you feel not enough. But actually, at other times, there will be stuff that you have such a rich understanding of and such a sense of mastery in comparison to perhaps what others in the cohort will have. And that's what makes clinical psychology really special, because you've all got to the start line, but with very different skills, experiences and abilities. And I think that's very, very special.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely subscribe to the idea that everybody knows something you don't, and that is why no one ever achieves anything completely by themselves in a vacuum. I don't think any human has ever achieved something without any input from someone else.
Every supervisor I've ever had, every client I've ever had comes with me and teachers and stuff comes with me throughout my career. And it's not just me and my determination. There's a whole host of luck as well that's happened along the way that's got me to being the professional and the person that I am.
Yeah, the two supervisors I've had live rent-free in my head, definitely. And I've been really lucky to have two very different supervisors at two very different points in their career. So my first I've been an AP for just under 2 years. So roughly speaking, the first year was with a supervisor of 40 years experience, seen it all, done it all, was very, I thought, just brilliant, wonderful person, and quite psychodynamically minded. So supervision was very open, free form, no agenda, no structure. and we would often talk about growing flowers as well. And then my new supervisor was newly qualified on a preceptorship, so part of their training towards band 8 was to have a supervisee, and I was that supervisee. So it was their first experience of being a clinical psychologist, their first their first role as a supervisor. And whereas my first supervisor was approaching retirement, my new supervisor just qualified, and although I don't know how old they are definitely a lot younger than me, maybe 10-ish years younger than me, maybe a little bit more. And that's something that we talked about early on in terms of how I felt about that, which for the record was absolutely fine. My age doesn't, I'm not like, I don't feel any kind of ego about my age or anything like that. I deferred to their role, their qualification, their level of experience and expertise. But also we talked about how they felt about having a significantly younger supervisee, and even potentially the idea that they may never have in the rest of their career a supervisee who is 10 or more years older than them. And I guess the older that they get, the less likely that will be. You know, when they're 50, it's even more unlikely that their supervisee will be in their 60s. So yeah, we discussed that, and that's, I mean, it hasn't created any barriers, I don't think, but it's, I think, partly has, maybe we could talk about age as power in terms of the social graces, because there have been occasions, I think, where there's been a two-way relationship in terms of learning and maybe even driving particular things, whereby I've kind of felt as a team we're not doing this and we should be, and I've been the one to kind of lead it. But then again, my current supervisor is a believer in kind of collective leadership. So it's also, there's also been that space for me to do that. It's not just simply because I'm older and I'm like, well, I know better, because that just isn't the case.
Yeah, and I think you absolutely can get assertive and great leaders from a young age, but it's something that I've developed as I've aged, and my confidence for being able to just observe, stop, think, and suggest and intervene. And, I'm very much less likely to put up with any kind of social injustice or, inequality in the team, or if I think that something's not happening that should be happening, I'm very much more likely to advocate for that now. And I think it's just my age and my experience that has allowed that to happen. But of course, like I said, there are younger people who've got there much quicker than I have. I'm just conscious, for those of you who don't know, I am still a practicing clinician, so I do see a clinical caseload. I'm just conscious of time because I've got a clinical session very shortly. But before we finish, I'd really love to know what your top tips are for reducing burnout in this career of ours, Tom.
Oof. So I think that partly because of my age and knowing that time passes quite quickly, so there's no need to rush, it's going to happen, that kind of helps me not have my foot too hard on the pedal to begin with. And again, I think through age and experience, that's a skill that I've learned, to kind of not throw all of myself into something. So that's not to say that I don't throw myself into this career, but I'm maybe, it's maybe like 8 out of 10. My foot is 8 out of 10 on the pedal. That's a really bad way of putting it, but if you get my meaning, because this isn't sustainable. So I guess in reality, what that means is, well, just referring back to what you said earlier, there are days when I just can't be bothered. I love my job. I love my colleagues. I love the clients that I work for. In fact, it's maybe the first time I've loved my job. And in spite of that, there are still days when I just cannot be bothered, and there are clients that I've struggled to really engage with the work. So when that happens, it's fine. Just sink into it and let it pass, and just give yourself a break. And also, when it's time to go home, I go home. And at the weekend, I don't think about my job, and I don't think about it at night. I guess I have a good work-life balance. I suppose that's a really simple way of putting it. But on the Monday morning, I haven't thought about what we talked about on Friday in supervision. It just hasn't crossed my mind. Sometimes it does. It's not black and white, but generally speaking, I managed to just leave it inside my shut laptop on a Friday.
Good.
But I don't know how that's developed really. Maybe just
I think it's
setting
containment.
boundaries. Yeah.
Containment. It's as you grow, you just get better at doing that, I think. And it's really important to develop and cultivate as a skill, and to know that you don't not care about your clients because you're not thinking about them, but you deserve to have your life, and the two are separate. And I was thinking, I love the analogy about the pedal to the metal. You know, when you are driving with, or even if you're walking past somebody that is doing 10 out of 10 pedal to the metal, it's distressing, it's inconvenient, you know, it makes you go, oh, it's exhausting. And so whilst you might think you need to be relentless all the time, it's really not nice in a team if someone is doing that, you know. And I've absolutely been relentless at points in my career that have probably been quite hard to be around, because I'm like, this service needs a shorter waiting list, and I'm going to show you that we're doing it because these clients deserve a better service. And I'm sure that was difficult for my colleagues at times, because I was like, productivity, it's accountability, 50% face-to-face, you know, I can do it, we can all do it, let's get it done, let's get these clients to have a better experience. But if you do that all the time, you're not going to be very well liked, and you're going to burn out, and, you know, ultimately you're not going to be any use to the service or the clients that you so badly want to support.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose to complete the analogy, you know, the more revs you use, the more petrol you burn.
Oh, you certainly do. And on that note, Tom, I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to go, but it's been the biggest pleasure speaking with you, and wishing you so well for these next 3 years and beyond. And if you want to come back on the podcast at any stage, give me a shout, and, you know, I'm here for you if you need any containment or advice. Feel free to slip into my DMs.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Marianne. It's been a privilege to come on and just chat randomly, and thank you to everyone who's listened. I hope it wasn't bland.
It was not bland, it was vibrant and
Excellent.
burnt orange, and may your beetroots flourish.
Yes, exactly. What a great note to finish on.
Thank you so much. Gosh, what an absolute pleasure to speak with Thomas, and I really wish him all the best with these next coming months and years. You'll be pleased to know I did make my client session on time, but yeah, I really am a practicing clinician. I hold a clinical caseload, as well as running all of these bits and pieces for you guys in the aspiring psychologist community. And if you would like to come closer into my world, do check out the details for the Aspiring Psychologist membership, which you can find in the show notes or in the description or in the bio link of any of my social channels. I'm Dr. Marianne Trent everywhere. Come and find me, come and follow me, come and connect with me, and let me know what content it is that you would really value, and I will look forward to offering that to you. Don't forget, we've got compassionate Q&A dates coming up for the application season. The first of those is on Monday the 4th of September 2023 at 6 p.m. The second of those is Tuesday the 3rd of October 2023 at 6 p.m. The third is Tuesday the 7th of November 2023 at 6 p.m. They're all available for free, streamed via my social channels, and will be available on replay as well. The best place to catch the replay is on Dr. Marianne Trent YouTube. Come and follow me there, come and subscribe, and you can also check out my previous playlists there too. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to this episode, or watching it, depending on what you are doing. And I will look forward to providing more great content for you when we next get together, which will be from 6 a.m. on Monday. for the next episode of the Aspiring Psychologist podcast. Thank you so much for being part of my world, and do be kind to yourself. Take care.
If you're looking to become a psychologist, then let this be your guide. With this podcast at your side, you'll be on your way to being qualified. It's the Aspiring Psychologist podcast with Dr. Marianne, Trent.